Might need to slate twice for.
Yeah, okay. I got it here.
How's my hair? Does my hair look all right?
Beautiful.
Okay, good.
We'll get to that in a sec. Let's slate. Go ahead.
You do second set of sticks for.
And Seth,
Yes, sir.
do you see what's on the ground? Like if I have my phone on the ground for a timer? Okay,
I mean, I do right now because I have a wide shot. But
Did Seinfeld have a makeup person?
He had a makeup person.
He did, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that's why he's Seinfeld, right?
This
That's
is
why
the
he's-
first season I have not put makeup on. We
Yeah.
were talking about it on the drive over, actually.
Feels good, huh?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I don't know. Probably look less good on camera, but
I've
it's,
found personally, as somebody who has worn makeup before on television, that I feel like in the last few years with the digital cameras and stuff that the makeup shows up more. I feel like it just sort of looks kind of weird.
unless there's only
And that's
a
my
very,
excuse for looking like this morning.
But unless there's only a very small amount on
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
I feel like you can really tell.
Yeah,
And
exactly, yeah.
I don't know.
I've been noticing it a lot, and I don't know, I'm not talking here, but I notice a lot in stand-up specials. It seems to me that like stand-up comedians are, you know, we're on the road, we're kind of grinding it out on the road, and you go out on stage in a t-shirt that you pull out of your bag and a pair of Converse or something like that. But then when it's time to shoot your stand-up special, everyone gets on a nice new leather jacket and
Right.
they get the makeup artist. I find people are wearing too much makeup in their stand-up specials these days. This is some behind-the-scenes shop talk right now, by the way, some TV talk. This is not really part of the interview. But anyways, yeah, it's. I feel it kind of makes me feel a bit different when I put makeup on to do an interview. You know? So do you feel that? Like you kind of feel like, oh, I got on my face, and this is weird. I'm not relaxed as much as I would be.
you know, the other person you're interviewing can tell, and it's less normal for a dude to wear makeup than it is for a female. And I just always felt like that shifts the dynamic. Just even so slightly.
Right.
And so the
So
more
it's about the other person reacting to you, looking at you. Oh, this guy's taking this conversation pretty seriously. He's got makeup on and stuff.
Right.
So maybe I better like get a little more nervous or something like that. Be less natural.
Yeah.
So you think about all those kinds of micro details, huh?
I probably overthink stuff too much.
That's cool.
I don't know that that's cool.
I'm like that too.
Said,
I am
but
like
you
that
have
as well,
said
so
before.
I find that interesting because I'm like that too.
I think this was with regards to stand-up or feedback in general. We can talk more about it when we get going. But the overanalyzing of stuff isn't good for you.
It's a double-edged sword for sure. You know? It can be good and it can be too much sometimes.
Right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, great to have you here. This is cool.
I'm excited. This is going to be a fun day. Well, at least for me. I'm really looking forward to, after the interview, visiting the property and seeing what this place is all about. Certainly a big departure from Los Angeles. But so I'm going to jump around to a bunch. I actually wanted to start by talking to you about Amazon.
Yeah.
You have a comedy special, a doc, an unscripted series. How did all of this come about?
Well, I did this show on Amazon called LOL Canada, which is a really funny show they have on there and on Prime. And after the show, you know, I just was chatting with the people over there. And in today's day and age, you can make a podcast, you can make social media videos, you can shoot. I like to shoot video and do photography and film.
Been doing that forever.
I just like doing it for fun as a exercise sometimes. But when you actually have a network that wants to put your stuff out and have a budget and a team of people like you guys have here to come in and get creative together, it's always a nice opportunity. So it's pretty exciting. And I had just moved home. I just got this farm and you know, it wasn't really the intent to make a TV show about moving to the farm, but it just sort of timed out that I moved here at the moment that I was talking to the folks at Prime Video, and here we are. We're making a cool show.
How about the biggest challenge in pulling this all together?
the production part?
Yeah, I mean, any of the three between the special, the unscripted series, or the doc, just the biggest challenge you've experienced in that process?
Well, it's a different kind of show than any show I've done before. It's the show's a docu-series. It's sort of following, events in my life, but I'm also directing it. So it's I am adding some elements of comedy to it, and with all the changing technology we have today with new cameras and
you're particularly in tune to that, I understand. When it comes to technology and cameras, and
I enjoy it, and I'm learning about it every day. So like we're shooting with Sony FX9 cameras, right? So I'd never had shot with those before. So I was okay, let's figure out the internal workings of this camera and what they're capable of, and it's a learning curve, and it's fun to figure it out for me. That's kind of half the fun of making a show, is getting to play with gadgets and microphones and cameras and editing equipment. That's always been the case, since I was a kid.
And you're into drones too, yeah.
And drones, yeah. That all kind of started me getting really into playing with the technology when I was a kid, when I was making music, but it sort of continued throughout my entire career, really, as I've always been very hands-on with the actual equipment.
I was talking to your manager, Rory, who was speaking about how, as a manager would, that you are at the height of your talent right now. But he said, typically 8 a.m. every day, it's a phone call or a text from you. Mm-hmm. What does that entail?
Well, Rory Rosegarten is an amazing legend in comedy. He's my manager. He's also executive producer of my shows, and works with me every day on putting things together. So, I like to. There's always a lot to do, not just with the stand-up tours, but also producing the shows and getting everything ready. So I tend to. Did he say it was annoying? That's what I'm asking.
Now he's a pretty good salesman, so if it was annoying, he wouldn't say. But he's like,
I ask him regularly, is this too much? But I found that I just sort of, in the morning, I do like to sort of brain dump everything through text message, and I'll just send him messages and not even expecting a response, just so he knows what's going on. Because there's a lot of detail involved in producing a TV show or a documentary. Yeah. So it's like, okay, we're working on this, and then he knows what I'm trying to get done. But I find in the morning is when I'm most kind of creative, actually, because I've just had a good sleep, and I got my coffee, and I have a sort of period of time in the morning where I like to get up and write and produce and plan things.
And is that regardless how much sleep you've gotten the night before, or is it?
Well, it's definitely. I mean, I try to schedule my life around, getting up in the morning in a way where if I'm working on something, I try to get some good sleep.
Yeah.
Get up in the morning and do my writing and my work in the morning. Yeah.
So I'm gonna jump around momentarily and eventually get to when you were a kid first starting out, and then learning about editing while working at the community college, while attending the community college, and all of that. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about stand-up, because obviously you have this comedy special that will be coming out. I understand just kind of stand-up in general more recently has been something you've really almost developed unexpected joy in. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, recently, as far as like maybe the last 15, 20 years or something, like 15 years ago maybe is when I really started touring again, But that is recently, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, because I mean, I stopped doing stand-up for a long time. I started doing stand-up when I was 16 years old. That was sort of my first sort of toe in the water of show business, right? I was growing up in Ottawa, Canada, and there was a comedy club called Yuck Yucks, and I heard about this guy Norm Macdonald, who was hilarious, and he was not famous yet, and he's from Ottawa, and I would go down to watch him, and then I heard there was, amateur night, and I began doing stand-up when I was in high school.
You would do it with a couple friends, but they bombed and quickly got out of the business, right?
One of them bombed, one of them did okay. And the one that did okay kept doing it. The one that bombed never came back.
Yeah.
I did well the first night, but then the next time I went, I bombed. It was this. I find that happens a lot with stand-up. Sometimes people get on stage for their very first time and they'll do great because they're nervous, and the crowd, I think, senses that sort of naivety and innocence and wants to support them and help them. But then the second time you get up, if you did well the first time, now you've got sort of a false sense of security and confidence, so then you get up and you just eat.
Describe the adrenaline rush you get from going on stage.
Doing stand-up becomes your life to a certain extent. Like, I'm touring all through the U.S. this year and Canada, and I know in my head now, I'm already anticipating being on stage in Austin, Texas at the end of January. In my head, I'm thinking, oh yeah, at the end of January, I'm going down to Comedy Mothership doing 5 shows in Austin, Texas. So that's in my head right now. It's in my head, like not writing like specifically, but all I got that tour coming up, and you sort of like you must be very similar to what you do. When you're traveling around doing your show, okay, I've got all these things to do, and so then when you get up on stage.
Wait, but just to pause momentarily, that anticipation for you, like what actually goes through your head beyond the...
I got to make sure
I have 5 shows.
I have some new material before I get back there, because I was just there last year. I don't want to do the exact same set. I got to keep writing. I got to make sure that I'm, have something relevant to say for the times that we're living in, and I'm doing this tour in the U.S. in my camper van, which I'm going to drive around and do the tour and do sort of one-nighters in different cities, which is not something I have done before.
It's a lot of driving.
Yeah, a lot of driving. But it's just a couple hours between each city. That's the nice thing about the USA. There's always somewhere to stop and do stand-up. So we Chattanooga, Nashville, Dallas, Austin, Albuquerque, then over to Colorado Springs, Aspen, Chicago, Pittsburgh. So
is there anxiety connected to the anticipation?
I think when I was younger, I would have called it anxiety. I think that I've gotten better at harnessing my moods and my energy in a way that I'm not sort of driven completely crazy by it. Also, I think living out here in the country is nice. It kind of is a nice reset to go ride the mule through the woods. It helps me relax,
Yeah.
And so what happens, that adrenaline rush, each time you get to your show, you get up on stage and you get that first laugh, and then you have a great time, and you have this celebratory event with people who are there to have fun, who've been watching you for my whole life a lot of times, and it's a real kind of a beautiful thing. And then you finish the show, and it's just like an exhale, a release, a relief. Oh, we just had a great show, and that one's done. And now on to the next show, and then the cycle starts again. You start to get a little on tour. It's interesting. I sort of find like as the day progresses, you start to feel the sort of little healthy nerves building up, and then you get up on stage and boom, it's a release. That's why you kind of, you got to learn to kind of harness and channel it properly, because it's exciting, doing stand-up every night, but then you have this huge adrenaline rush. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. You can't get to sleep. You can kind of lose it pretty easily if you're not careful. So.
And you said you've cut back on drinking because you've recognized it negatively impacts.
When did I say that?
Did I tell you that? You said it somewhere that you've cut back on drinking because
you do research on things.
We try.
I didn't even know I said that.
Because it negatively impacts the mind. What was involved in getting out of that place, or that cycle?
Hangovers get a lot worse when you get older. And that was probably, I think the body is pretty intelligent in that way, and it does tell you when things are going too far. I never really looked at it like I had a drinking problem, but I think as I got older, it became a little less cute, to go out, to be in, some city and, anywhere. And after your show on a Saturday night, you're, having a bunch of drinks with, some people and kind of, not losing control, but just sort of, just damaging your health, But, honestly, the thing that really bothered me about it most wasn't the health concerns. It was that I was not as effective on stage. It was frustrating. And the sort of whole adrenaline rush that you get from stand-up is dampened by alcohol.
Take me through your process for writing, starting with in the morning when you open up your notes on your phone.
So I'm sort of always writing. Like I've learned to identify if something's funny just on sort of going through my day. If you notice something funny, or if you say something funny, or if you think of something funny. I'm always sort of able to now identify, oh, that would work as a bit. That would work as an idea that could be, developed, and I'll jot it down in my notes in my phone. So it's not so much lately that I get up every morning and I sit at a typewriter and I type up my stand-up, but I'm just sort of always adding notes. Now my Apple Watch, I go, Siri, write this down, And
do you do that?
I'm starting to, but I just got this, but it's recording me. Stop it. But I'm starting to,
so then
I'm trying to leave my phone at home more, and so I'm transitioning over to this because I'm trying to stay off social media a little bit because it's driving me nuts.
Why?
Just because it's addictive and can become too consuming. Because I've become more aware of how I'm being manipulated by the social media companies into staying on the phone longer and staying there longer. So even though I enjoy it, I post all the time on my Instagram and on my YouTube, Facebook, all that stuff. It's fun for me, but I've watched you on TikTok a lot. You pop up on my TikTok all the time. And
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and I realize, no, it's great. And I realize though sometimes it's like, oh my God, I was supposed to do all this stuff today, and I've just been watching Graham on TikTok all morning. This is what. But
hours can go by.
It's designed to kind of keep you there. So I've found, I'm here in the country and nature. I like to ride off into the wilderness on my mule Fanny, and I find even then, if I have my phone with me, I can kind of pull it out and start streaming in the woods, and then I read a comment, and then I follow up and respond. All of a sudden, I'm just out supposed to be enjoying myself in nature, and instead I'm on my phone. So now I got this watch because it's got the, I got this watch because it's got a SIM card in it. I don't have to bring my phone with me, and it also has fall detection, so if I am injured back in the woods, this will let somebody know, and they'll find my injured self.
So, but take it that those little comments you put in your notes for bits. Mm-hmm. What happens from there when you go back to it?
So, I mean, there's a lot of downtime when you're traveling on the road, and I usually in the afternoon or sometimes even right before I go on stage, I just open up my notes and I scroll through it and I sort of see what's there, and then I'll work it out on stage. I'll record my sets with audio, just with my iPhone. I'll just leave it on stage sometimes, or in my back pocket and just record it. And sometimes when I'm driving to my next gig, I'll listen to the set from the night before. And
always, or only
not
sometimes?
Always. No, I don't do it too much.
And what are the situations where you choose to do it?
When I'm really actively trying to refine a set, which I always am doing, but I go through cycles where sometimes I just kind of want to just feel it and not.
Is there something in recent memory that comes to mind?
Well, I just shot my stand-up special recently. So in the I hadn't shot a special in years, and so like the 6 months leading up to that on tour, I was sort of really trying to refine exactly what I wanted to say, and how I want to say it. And so, I would being a little bit more observant of exactly what I'm doing. But I do find that you can go too far down that road too. And then
How so?
it can become less natural to me, I feel, if I'm thinking about the words specifically too much. I like to just kind of, spend a lot of time performing and just, well, this is what leads to the sort of the conversation about drinking that you mentioned. You get up on stage and you perform, and then you have a great set and you worked out a bunch of new bits on stage, and then after the show you go out and have a bunch of shots of whiskey, and then you wake up in the morning hungover. You don't remember what happened the night before. Your mind is like, or if you're still a little groggy from the night before and you get up on stage, your mind's not operating at the same kind of rhythm. Not only are you not remembering what you wanted to say precisely, but you're also not recalling and recollecting things the next day of what you did. And so your whole sort of, speed of kind of improvement kind of slows down. I don't want to sound like I'm not having fun on the road. I do like to have a beer, and I still drink. I'm not, but I schedule it, around like, okay, I got a few days off. Okay, we'll get hammered tonight.
Was there a moment you recognized that though?
There's been a few moments of realization. I think there's nothing worse than not feeling good when you're on stage. Nothing worse. That's the worst feeling for me. So, in the early years of touring where it was new and exciting, oh my God, I'm in, Austin, Texas, or I'm in, some city, Chicago, let's go out after the show, and your adrenaline's up, you go out after the show, and on Friday night, right, and then Saturday night you got 2 shows, right, and you're on stage, just like, oh, I'm not, and you get off stage and you go, I still had a great set, and everybody laughed, and it was fun, but I know that it would have been more fun for me, at least, if I was just completely like firing on all sort of cylinders, And I actually really noticed it once when I decided, okay, I'm going to quit drinking for a while, and I didn't drink for a couple of months. And I noticed sort of my speed of even improvising and pulling random ideas on stage while doing crowd work out of thin air just became dramatically more pronounced. And
really,
I really, it was to me, it was the moment where I noticed how much alcohol affects you. I'm not saying I'm not talking about drinking while you're on stage. I'm talking about like having 2 beers the night before the show will affect you. Your mind is operating so fast. You're pulling ideas. You're talking to a crowd. You got to keep a rhythm going. You have a set of material and jokes, and you're trying to hit this precise rhythm that you're working on and you're developing, and you feel. It's like music. I make music, so you can feel, oh, I'm a little behind the beat here, which is cool in music, but not necessarily cool in stand-up.
Yeah.
You're just sort of, I'm not, and it's a micro rhythm adjustment with 2 beers the night before. That's it's something nobody would notice but yourself. But then it's an interesting thing. Then you quit drinking for 6 months, and all of a sudden it's like everything, or 2 months. Sorry, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. But you quit drinking for a couple months, and you notice, oh man, I'm really in the pocket here. I'll use another musical term. I'm really in the pocket here in the set, and that was a moment of realization, and that was when I stopped basically drinking before I went on stage, and then after a few months I decided I was going to not drink for 24 hours before I go on stage. So that's pretty much where I am now. I try not to have a drink within 24 hours of going on stage. And when you're touring all the time, you're performing sometimes 4 or 5 days a week, that's pretty good for your health, because
Right.
now I only drink on the weekends,
Right, and when
I make up for lost time on the weekends, though. Actually, or on a Monday night. Nothing like getting hammered on a Monday night.
Okay, what's the
you do stand up all on the weekends, so you go Monday night's your night off. You go and get loaded.
What's the Monday
you go
night
to a
routine?
Jack in the Box, sit in the parking lot in the curb, and get loaded. No, I don't know. I'm actually trying not to drink too much. It's just not as much fun as I don't want to spend too much time talking about not drinking, because I'm not really, like I said, I don't think it's ever been a severe problem for me. It's just something that I've found that I'm getting a lot more enjoyment out of life, just kind of scaling back a little bit on that.
And what's interesting is I wasn't even planning to ask about it, but I think the reason I did was it's clearly something that is at least occasionally on your mind. And I also get when, like, your goal is to make the most of your talent, even not considering the health aspect.
Absolutely,
You
yeah.
want to constantly tweak to figure out how to continue that progression.
If you're on stage in front of 1,000 people and you're telling jokes for an hour and a half or so, and then you get off stage and you think, oh man, that wasn't as good as it could have been, it's the worst feeling in the world. It's the worst feeling in the world, and I don't want to ever have to feel that.
What has to happen to play Radio City?
That would be pretty cool. I'd like to play there for sure.
You said that's a goal of yours. That's why.
I mean, it would be an awesome thing. I probably, if enough people watch this interview, maybe I'll do that next year. We'll see what happens.
Joe Rogan, as you've heard before, credits you with inspiring him to start a podcast.
Yeah.
What was your reaction the first time you heard that?
I thought it was so cool that he was so, forthcoming about that with me. I mean, he didn't have to say that. He's been a comedian and in this business for long before he met me, and a huge star and legend in television and stand-up comedy. But there was this time in the early 2000s where I just decided, hey, you can stream live on the internet now. Like, it just was sort of apparent to me, because I sort of had been following it. I had my website up in the early 90s, 94, 95, I guess we started my website.
You were a very, very early adapter.
And we were
for
posting
all the-
audio clips on the website in the 90s, and I was always saying with my friends, probably pretty soon you're going to be able to stream video on the internet, and then we can just make a show and just make our own show and just put it on the internet. So we were probably waiting for that to happen for about 10 years, and then all of a sudden, oh wow, you can actually upload a video and people can watch it. And so I started diving into the technology that was out there and reaching out to different people who were doing this technology, and just kind of dove into it and built this multi-camera talk show set TV studio in my living room in Los Angeles.
And what was involved on kind of your end in kind of figuring out that business model?
I don't know if I ever figured out the business model. Joe figured out the business model, but
Oh, come on. I mean,
I figured out how to plug it all in, but it was pretty early, so the business model wasn't quite there yet, I mean, as far as the business model for what I called Webovision, it was sort of a break-even proposition, really, for about 4 or 5 years. It was generating enough revenue to kind of update the cameras, pay a few employees, like one employee sometimes, one camera person who would be switching the camera in the back of the room. Because it was sort of the early 2000s, advertising industry hadn't really moved over to web yet officially, sort of starting. To me, it was about how do we just make it work? Technically, how do we make it work? Because the first couple of years, we would go live and the stream would crash, because too many people would tune in. Because it was an exciting time, actually, because there was nobody doing it. So imagine doing a live streaming talk show on the internet, and you're the only live streaming talk show on the internet that's live that night in the entire world. I mean, it was cool.
Crazy.
We were getting millions of people tuning in with no advertisers. But it was really just about making it work. At a very sort of, microscopic level, making little things work. I wanted to have tally lights on the cameras, so I knew which camera I was looking at when the camera was on me. Because I like to look in the camera, when I'm doing the show. I'd like to do the sort of Johnny Carson kind of take to the camera, right? And so we sort of, initially we set up the camera, or how do we cut between cameras? This was in the early days. There wasn't all these switchers and stuff around. So we found this thing called a video toaster. And we, they were sort of new versions of these sort of prosumer switchers. They'd sell them to schools and churches, and they'd use them to, stream the video just for the in-house screen, And so we would run our cameras through that, just sort of video cameras. But then I didn't know which camera to look at, so we we called up the company that made the switcher, and this company, New Tech at the time, and they went on to make a thing called a TriCaster, and we said, you need a tally light, So I began sort of working with the company that made the switcher and say, we need to have a way to plug in a light so we can put a light on top of the camera, so when we cut to camera 1, the light comes on, and I know I can look at camera 1. That's the one that's on me, because we're live. We can't cut to it later. So like little in the weeds stuff like that. Just being able to stream live. So, I was in the Hollywood Hills. The internet wasn't very fast up there, but even the fastest internet anyone could get in early 2000 wasn't fast enough to stream live, but then also take calls on Skype at the same time. So I wanted to be able to take video calls. So we got 2 Mac, whatever those old Macs were, that they're computers, and in the monitor, we got 2 of those. We had a third one back by our switcher. We built a sort of a routing switcher where people would call into this switcher, this computer in the back, and then they'd be sent up to the one on my screen. So we had multiple streams happening at once. The live stream going out in high quality, the low, like 720p, but the calls coming in. So we had to then get a microwave antenna on the roof of the house that would then these bonded T1 lines, and it was like the internet bill was pretty high. When there was no budget for the show and you're spending a bunch of dough to get this satellite microwave set up that would send our internet down to Studio City, where then it would be fired up to the real satellite tower, cell tower or whatever. It was like just foundational stuff just to make it work, which was so fun for me. It's kind of funny, there's not really a live setup quite like what we had in my house in 2005. There was the coolest thing about the early Webo vision, I call it. I had my friend who was helping me, who was working with me, who's a bit of a tech, I always found really technical, savvy people who were really interested in getting in the weeds technically, and we built a switch that we mounted under the desk, the talk show desk. So this switch, it was like a metal switch. We had soldering guns. We were making the switch. We'd switch this switch, and then that would turn on everything. So there was a television switcher on the desk, a small one, that was connected to the bigger switcher at the back of the room. All the computers were wired in to a central computer, which spoke to all the other computers. This friend of mine, who was a bit of a computer genius, wrote up some code that told the computer to start recording. The second the switch switched, all the cameras came on, the phone system came on, the Skype calls came on, the lights came on, the microphone turned on, the microphone on the desk turned on. The computer started recording, and I could start switching. So I could get up in the middle of the night, basically, and come out in my house in Los Angeles, sit down at 1 o'clock in the morning, and just go click, and this entire TV studio would turn on, and would go to the front page of TomGreen.com live. And I'd just start doing a show, and the phone would start ringing. I'd start taking calls, and then when I clicked it off, everything would shut off, and then this computer would take the file, it would upload it, and post it on TomGreen.com. I'd wake up in the morning, and 50% of the time it would have actually worked. You know what I mean? And then we'd have to figure out why it didn't work. Why did it not work? The internet went down while the upload was happening, or something like that. And so, but just taking live calls on Skype video, and the other thing, going through, like being, you see this all the time now, but doing a talk show and having a TV screen on the wall with the internet on it, and you're talking to someone, we're talking about something, what's that? You're looking it up on the internet. These kinds of things were sort of new ideas, to be actually sort of felt like we were actually inside the internet a little bit. I'm sitting there talking to my guest, and we're looking at something that's on the internet, able to cut to the internet and talk about what we're looking at, and then it was exciting. And it was exciting because the people watching were a little bit more tech savvy, I think, because you had to almost be kind of tech savvy to even figure out how to watch it, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it wouldn't work, so you had to have faster internet. It was not as universally accessible like social media is today. So there was sort of this feeling of we're doing something new here. This is pretty exciting.
What made you continue to stick with it, even in spite of the business challenges?
There were little kind of wins all the time. We ended up getting a television syndication deal at one point, and we changed the name of the show to Tom Green's House Tonight. So the show, if you ever see on the internet, like old clips, most of it's not online now, but ironically, most of it's not online now. But if you saw, there's reasons for that, by the way. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Well, because one of the things that's interesting about streaming on the internet when it's not as universally normal to watch internet television is that there was more room for experimentation because you knew that nobody was watching, or the people that were watching were more aware of what this was. Like they were aware this was an experimental thing. So I could get up in the middle of the night. This is where I start to sound crazy. Oh no, that ship sailed. You already sound crazy. I'd get up in the middle of the night. There was a thing called the French Clown at midnight. Okay. It was the French Clown of midnight. And I would get up and sometimes for a personal amusement would go into the bathroom. I'd put on my clown makeup and my top hat. I'd go and I'd flip the switch. And then I'd go on and I'd do a call-in show where I would only speak in French. And the callers, of course, didn't know how to speak French, except occasionally someone from France or Quebec would call in, and I'd have French conversations with them, but everyone else was calling in English, and I'd just speak to them in French with my clown makeup. And this is just so, was so silly and off the wall, right? But, you could get as weird as you wanted to. So it's not that I wouldn't want to get weird on the internet today, too. But I feel that it's harder and maybe not even weird anymore to be weird on the internet. That's where it gets really weird. It's not really weird to be weird anymore. It's almost weird to be not weird on the internet. So that's the thing. The element of surprise was there in the beginning days of the internet, or in the early days of the Tom Green Show.
And so because it's the element of surprise is less present now, that's discouraged you from having that old material online?
I feel like at the time it was just, what am I looking at here? Like when I go back to the early days of the Tom Green Show and on public access TV and then MTV, and I would pull these pranks on my parents. Right. You can go on TikTok now and it's nonstop kids pulling pranks on their parents, right? Painting their house, painting their car, barging into their bedroom in the middle of the night, putting animals in the house, doing all those pranks, right? And innovative, funny, hilarious new pranks, right? And they're funny, but when we were doing that in the early days, like people would come up to me and say, "Are those your real parents?" They didn't even understand it was real. Like it was just sort of so out there that somebody would film their parents for real and put it on television. So it had a bigger reaction.
So I wanted to shift gears and ask you about COVID, because that's going to lead to here.
Yeah.
In the early days of the pandemic, how long did you go without seeing another human in person?
I think maybe like a little bit too much has been made of this, because I know sort of.
I asked that because it seems like you get self-conscious whenever it's brought up.
I hate to say it, but it's because it's become political.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not a political person.
Yeah.
And so the fact that, I, as a cancer survivor, in the beginning of the worldwide global pandemic, which sounded serious to me, because it's a worldwide global pandemic, decided to listen to what they said you're supposed to do. And, I wore the mask and wore rubber gloves and, sprayed my groceries down with Clorox bleach and, just made sure that, I didn't eat anything unless I'd sprayed bleach on it. Just all the normal things you're supposed to do.
Hey, I remember getting groceries early on in the pandemic and wiping the groceries.
Wiping the outside of your Ragu spaghetti sauce bottle. I eat good. But, So it seems silly now, but in the early days of it, I was sort of maybe took it a little more seriously than some people, because I am very aware that it happens, right? I got testicular cancer right in the middle of my show, being the successful show on MTV, and then I got sick, and so I realize life throws curveballs at you. I'm prepared for that. And so when I hear there's a pandemic, this thing, remember in the beginning, it was, people didn't know what was going to happen, how far it was going to go.
And first it was going to be a week, and
maybe
then
it went further than people wanted it to, and as it became more, we became more sort of aware of how the disease worked. People became frustrated with the restrictions and things like that. But in the beginning, I was thinking, okay, I'm just going to err on the side of caution. Now, to be honest with you, I also lived alone, right? I was, not married. I don't have kids. I was living alone, and so I was already living alone. And my stand-up comedy tours were all canceled, so the shows were all canceled. So I wasn't going and performing every night. And I would say, admittedly, I kind of leaned into the absurdity of it, without I'm not saying that I wasn't actually isolating for real, but I also found it quite interesting, to be honest with you. Selfishly, I found it interesting to lean into the idea of being home alone and streaming on the internet. And I decided I'm going to learn how to play piano. So I didn't really know how to play piano, and now I can kind of play, because at the beginning of COVID, I would go live every night, and for the first couple of months, basically, which was, those are the Guinea Hens. those are not wild hens. Those are my pets, and they're going to be with us for the rest of the interview, probably. I probably shouldn't have let the Guinea Hens out this morning, but that's cool. It's natural sound, but perfect, right? It's perfect.
Right.
I'm trying to think if there's anything I can do about that. The answer might be no.
So is there any way we can put those up? Or?
If we want to break the fourth wall here for a second, and I can just go.
Sure.
Yeah, we're going to take a camera and follow you real quick.
Okay, yeah. So, hello. These guys are great. Hello, guys.
So
Let's see
how
if
many of these
maybe
do you
we
have?
can walk them down to their coop, and if we're lucky, they'll get in the coop. Come on this way, guys. Nope. Other way. Down here. Come on. Come here, guys. Up there. Go in. Come on. Go in there, buddy. Go in. In here. Oh, in there. Go in. Come on. Let's see. Now, let's just see if they go in now. Oh, it's our lucky day.
One ran out. Should I?
One's out. It's a bit of a counterintuitive thing. You almost want to let it decide to go in on its own at this point. You should just run this as the entire interview. Just us staring at a bird. Here we go.
Here it goes.
Watch, here we go. Wait, maybe it'll go in on its own? No. Okay. I'd say there's at least a 35% chance we're going to pull this off.
Should I walk towards it or no?
Yeah, maybe sort of walk sort of towards, but slowly. Yeah, that feels good. Yeah, slowly. Yeah. No. Got her. All right.
So up until COVID, you had always been back here at least once a year to Ottawa.
Yeah.
Obviously, here is an hour and a half outside. But what made you decide to move back?
Yeah, it was like a combination of things all happened at once. My tour was stopped during COVID, and I'd been kind of thinking of moving back to Canada for a few years, probably.
Why?
I just kind of missed my family, really. I missed being close to my parents, you know. I have a close relationship with them, and you know, we were friends and we would hang out all the time, and even though I, you know, pulled those pranks on them when I was a kid, they still talk to me. So I missed them. Touring, doing stand-up now has become sort of almost something I've been doing full-time now for almost, you know, almost 20 years now, you know. Like it's not like back when I was doing the show on MTV, I wasn't doing stand-up when I was doing my show on MTV. But now I'm always traveling and doing stand-up, and so when I go home from doing stand-up, I'd rather go somewhere like this, you know, out in nature and in close to my family and where I'm from. And so, you know, when I wasn't touring doing stand-up, you know, I'd come home and visit for longer periods of time, and so it just kind of felt like I wanted to have a nice, calm place to live when I'm not working, right? But no, there's lots of factors happened into why I specifically did it at that moment. Also, at the beginning of the, you know, I got this camper van and I was going out into the desert filming videos, and I just realized how much I like being outdoors and in nature, but also just I kind of like being alone sometimes. Like I like getting up in the morning and walking out, and the sun's coming up, and it's just a cup of coffee and it's quiet, and it really is very peaceful, relaxing thing for me. And I really figured that out when I was going out into these really remote areas of the American Southwest in my van and getting up in the morning and making my coffee, and I'd be all alone in the middle of the desert thinking this is just so cool. And you know, I didn't grow up on a farm, right? I grew up in the city of Ottawa and the suburbs, and skateboarding and always around, you know, people. And it's not like I grew up with a mule and a donkey and chickens, and this is all kind of new and exciting for me. You know, I've been here a couple of years now, but 3 years now, actually. But
What was involved with finding this place?
you know, it was, I really am sort of, I think often how lucky I am to have found this specific place, because, you know, I just love it here so much, and it's, I'm never gonna move. I'm gonna live here for the rest of my life. I just know I am. I mean, I just love it here. It's the first time I've ever lived somewhere where I know I'm not leaving, and I'm planting trees here. I'm just sort of, you know, I'm settling in here. But
And what is it about this place you think that makes you feel that?
the place specifically, and also just sort of the stage in my life that I'm at. You know, I'm 53 years old. I, you know, grew up in Canada, not far from here. I started my show. We moved down to MTV. We moved down to LA. I lived there for 20 years. I really sort of started realizing I missed living, you know, not in LA, really, and home where I'm from. There's so many things about being back in Canada that sort of remind me of where my personality came from, where my comedy came from, who I am as a person, and so I was starting to miss that. You know, I was starting to miss the feeling of, you know, like when I started my rap group when I was a kid, or when I started doing stand-up comedy as a kid, it was really weird to be doing something like that. You know, it was not a normal thing. I wasn't surrounded by other people making music and doing stand-up comedy. It was grew up in Ottawa. It was a government town and a sort of conservative place, and people weren't doing this sort of weird, wacky stuff, which made it much more fun for me, you know, because it was even more strange, you know. And so then living in Los Angeles, all of a sudden it became like, oh, everyone's sort of doing this, you know. Everyone's out there jumping up and doing stand-up and making music and performing and acting, and started to kind of make, you know, the art of it all sort of seems somewhat formulaic. And that was sort of always what I was kind of rebelling against, right? Was trying to do something that was kind of like breaking down the mold of how things are made. So then getting away from that, and now, you know, not being kind of completely influenced by my surroundings, but more just thinking, okay, this is this canvas here now of creativity. You know, we just chased some guinea hens. You know, that would not have happened in Los Angeles.
Right.
You know, I've got my mule and my donkey, and learning about all that. It's just kind of a lot of factors. A lot of factors.
What, if anything, do you miss about LA?
You know, I first of all, I'm not like sort of hating on LA or anything. Like I feel like I don't really miss anything about it. I miss some of my friends down there. I have a lot of friends there, but I can go see them, and some of them come visit me here.
You haven't gotten them all up yet?
Not everybody's come to visit, but it's time flies so fast when you get older. You know, I can't even believe like 3 years has gone by since I've been here. But a few of my friends have come to visit. My friend Gabe Abelson, who's a writer who I've worked with over the years, has come up to hang out a bit, and a lot of my friends also live up here too. But
I want to take you back to when you were a kid, growing up. Describe everything you recall from the laugh you got when running for student consul.
My speech was on humor, comedy, really, was the subject for my speech. And it was kind of a big deal in the 6th grade at my school, the public speaking competition, because the winner for the class would then perform in front of the whole grade. And then the winner, there was judges, and they would judge your speech. And then the winner of that would go perform in front of the whole school in the auditorium. And then the winner of that would go perform regionally and represent the whole school. And so, I think it was around the 3rd grade was the first time we had to do a public speech. And I did mine on rocks, right? Igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks, like something pretty sort of, just sort of somewhat boring subject. But, it was something to talk about, I guess, when you're in the 3rd grade, rocks. And then, actually, that might have been the 4th grade was the first year we did speech, as the 4th grade. Then the 5th grade, I did How Am I Going to Change My School? And that was sort of a funny speech. And we're going to put Coca-Cola in the water fountains type of thing, that hack bit that everyone does in their 5th grade speech about changing the school, putting Coke in the water fountains bit. But so then grade 6, we say grade 6 in Canada, not 6th grade, so it's hard for me to stop saying grade 6. But in the 6th grade, I just decided to do my speech on humor, and it was about structurally talking about how comedy works, and slapstick comedy, and and but I ended up winning for the class and then the grade, and then I went and competed in front of the school and in front of the whole auditorium. And
you felt like you were going to puke, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, I just sort of like every night when I get on stage.
Is that the case?
No, it's not
Okay.
that extreme now. But like I said, you do get a little anxiety before you go on stage, which is good. A little adrenaline, a little nerves, build up. So, which is a good thing. Which is why it's fun. It's like anything, it's fun because it's exciting, So I did my speech, and then the judge asked me a question. I could tell she was trying to, like it was one of the teachers, right? I could tell she was trying to stump me, she didn't like me. I remember her asking, I have like photographic memory of her asking me, and she asked me, you said in your speech that sometimes you can use comedy to get out of a difficult situation. Give me an example of a time you have used comedy or humor to get out of a difficult situation, right? But I remember something popped into my head, and I had an answer, and I said, here's an example of when I can use comedy to get out of a situation. I remember when I got my report card last year. I brought it home, and I said to my dad, Dad, here's my report card, but I got to tell you, my marks are underwater. And my dad said, what do you mean? I said, they're below sea level. Okay? So like this was some joke that I'd read in a joke book, right? But I think there was like a nervousness from the entire school of 4th and 5th graders and 6th graders worried for me, that I wasn't going to come up with a good answer. So they just it got the biggest laugh because I just came up with something, on the fly. And it was such a relief, and such a huge laugh from the crowd. And I went out in the schoolyard at lunch, and everybody was coming up to me saying, that was how'd you come up with that so fast? And that was the moment where I realized I wanted to be a comedian. It was in the 6th grade.
And the rest is
history. I got that laugh, just been chasing that laugh for the rest of my life.
So you're 25 years old and decide to move back in with your parents.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Parents didn't seem to like that too much. I was talking to your mom, Mary Jane, about that the other day. Explain what they would do when you would take showers.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah, see, because my parents said I could move back in because I was working on the show. I'd started the show at that point. So I was working on public access TV, but it was voluntary, right? The Tom Green Show I didn't get paid to do it for the first several years. And I'd studied broadcasting in school, and they knew I was sort of applying myself to something that was sort of, had some potential of turning into something. So they said, okay, yeah, I can move back in. So I didn't have to pay rent, didn't have to get a job. Essentially, I was able to just focus on making this show all day, And, but I think like my parents didn't like. I mean, it's funny now as an adult. I sort of understand what they were doing when they'd said, "Oh, why are you leaving the lights on all the time?" It's like, well, they're lights. I don't like leaving the lights on all the time. So they would tell me turn the lights off, or they didn't like me taking long showers. Because cost to heat the water. Literally, was my parents were kind of. Didn't want me taking long showers. They didn't like the fact.
And in fairness to them, you have taken some really long showers over the years, too.
Did they say that, or?
No, but I mean, you've talked about how, these are the extreme examples, but like before Letterman for the first time, or before your MTV pitch, like
that's true.
4-hour showers.
Yeah, so. Maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but.
Yeah.
But, well, yeah, for some reason, like when I was doing Letterman, the first time I got asked to go on Letterman, I just moved to New York. The show was brand new. This was the first talk show that I really was on. That and Oprah was the first one I was on. Letterman was the first one to ask. But
those aren't a bad first two.
Yeah, and I was just I was terrified, But Letterman especially, because he was my sort of hero, And here I was going on a show. So, to me, it was just like the anxiety of the warm water over my head was kind of trying to keep myself from losing my mind before I went on Letterman.
But at home, it was kind of your only way to get some privacy, basically.
And I think my parents were like, even though I was living there doing the show, my dad wanted me to get a job and go get a real job, and then he'd, get up in the morning and I'd be in the shower, and he's like, why is he sitting in the shower? He should be out getting a job, So they'd turn the hot water off in the house, and then the water would get cold, and so they were kind of pranking me too, Now that you mention it, I recreated that moment in my movie Freddie Got Fingered, when I'm in the shower in scuba equipment. And the door's locked, and Rip Torn plays my father, and he's knocking on the door. What are you doing in there? Get in that shower all day. You got to get out and get a job. And then he he turns the hot water off. Yeah.
Oh, and your dad was a tank commander back in the day in the Canadian military.
Yeah.
How do you think that impacted him?
Well, it was definitely like his father was in the military. He was in the military. It's a very structured, authority sort of, driven kind of occupation. My dad was known to be a bit of a prankster himself, I believe, back in the day, and he was sort of, but he did understand that sort of, the idea of getting up at the crack of dawn and going for a jog and then going to work was, it wasn't sort of an artist's lifestyle, you know, where you could sort of make a video and be up at night making music in a nightclub and then sleep in till 11 o'clock and, you know, kind of roll out of bed. No, it's like, get up, 6 a.m., what are you doing? You're not sleeping here all hours of the afternoon. You got to get out and get a job. I mean, that was literally the mantra, you know, so.
And even over the summer, he was waking you up at
he would wake me up in the morning, and I started finding places I could sleep in the house that were, you know, like that he didn't know about. You know, so I'd set my alarm for like 6:30 a.m. Then I'd get up just before him, and then I'd go move in my sleeping bag over behind the furnace or something like that, and I'd sleep there till he went to work. And he'd come down looking for me. I wasn't there. That worked for a couple of months, you know.
And
then I'd go back to bed and sleep till noon, you know, and then go out and work on the show all afternoon. And
well, speaking of him being a prankster, do you remember the hot pepper prank when you were like 4 years old?
I don't actually remember that. No, but I think I've heard him talk about that. What was that again?
That
sounds pretty traumatic. What, he was putting hot pepper in my food or something?
Something. I mean, we'll have to ask him.
The one I remember was that they would put sardine. He would make me a sardine sandwich when I would go to school. One day. Because what he did was he always made egg salad sandwich. My dad would make my sandwich for lunch for me the night before, and he'd always make me, you know, my brown bag lunch, you know, and and he'd make me like he'd always make these egg salad sandwiches, and like, I love egg salad sandwiches now, but when you're in the 3rd grade, the 4th grade, and you go to school and it's time for lunch and everyone's got peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and then you open your egg sandwich and it smells like eggs all around, and then you're like the egg guy. It's embarrassing. So I'd always complain about, now it's ridiculous. I mean, I had a delicious egg salad.
Right.
I remember my teacher, Mr. Moseon, would always come, he was a young guy too, he was probably in his 20s, and so he'd always come trade his peanut butter sandwich with me for my delicious egg sandwich that my dad made. And I was so happy to get rid of it. Then I'd go home and complain about my egg sandwich. I think my dad was offended, so he made me a sardine sandwich one day. I remember I got to school and I opened up, there's like fish heads sticking out between the bread. Mr. Moseon did not trade his peanut butter sandwich for that. So.
I want to run through some notable pranks and just what comes to mind, get you to recall some of the moments.
Mm-hmm.
The first one being the statues of your parents.
Yes, they don't really like me talking about that one, actually. So that's the one that they really don't like talking about. For some reason, they're very offended by that. So. In fairness to them, they really don't like that one, so I'm not going to talk about it too much.
Genuinely?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can I ask what they don't like about that? Because it's so blatantly a joke.
I don't know, really. I think it's just that trying to choose my words carefully here because I don't want to make it worse by talking about it, but I don't know. I just think that it's like maybe my parents are a little more conservative than I thought they were. So like the idea of it being kind of, and the imagery was something that they were not happy with.
I don't know if I should be laughing or not. But
it was supposed to be funny.
One would think out of all the stuff you have done that.
I think it was the fact it was on the front lawn, the neighbors could see it, and it was, the imagery was embarrassing to them. Whereas, painting the house plaid or, things like that was sort of a less...
Or having a lesbian,
but it was
sex scene on their car.
But they were anonymous lesbians, right? They weren't actually them. Lifelike images of them, with facial features exactly the same.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I think my parents really like lesbians. So to show my parents how much I love them, I've turned my parents' vehicle into more than just a vehicle. I've turned it into the Slutmobile. Won't Mom and Dad be surprised and overwhelmed tomorrow morning when they get up to go to work?
And I think this was sort of like, this was the time where, the show had moved to the U.S. and they maybe were thinking that the pranks were going to end, and then we flew back in the middle of the night. Now we had a budget, and we showed up with sort of elaborate things. So
they threatened MTV over that, didn't they?
Yeah, that's true. It was very different than any of the shows that followed it. Even going as far as the Osbournes or the Kardashians or Osbournes was on MTV. Families, joking around with each other, everybody on camera, everybody getting paid, right? Everybody had a contract with MTV. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying this was genuinely, they were so surprised when we pulled into the pranks, like they didn't even really know there was a show at first, you know, or they didn't really know that we were coming, and they weren't being paid, they weren't part of it. It appears we were barging into their house every day, but really it was more like, you know, every couple of weeks we'd go in and do a prank, and then, you know, over time, you know, over years, we've had, you know, dozens and dozens of these pranks we did to them.
But I do understand just the any kind of negative feelings they had about the pranks at that time were kind of lessened after Oprah called, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of, in a weird way, made a big difference.
Yeah, and, you know, in all fairness, like, my parents were really excited and proud of the show. And
As they should have been.
there was never a moment where my parents were sort of, you know, disowning me because I pulled pranks on them or anything like that. You know, there was never a moment where there was real negativity about it. There was moments where they were upset about something for a couple of days, but there was never sort of a long-term period where my parents were like, you know, we don't want to talk to you anymore or anything like that. It was always, they would always kind of snap out of it after a few days and realize, oh, you know, that painting the house was actually really funny when they saw it all put together and on TV. So, but yeah, when Oprah called, it was a sort of a moment where they realized that things maybe were actually working out for me. Right? Because the show had moved to New York. I hadn't been on any other talk show yet. And then all of a sudden, you know, Oprah called and wanted to fly my parents to Chicago and talk about all the pranks. And we played, like, you know, the car and the house and the waking up pranks on Oprah, and watched them. And Oprah would laugh, really laugh really hard, you know, and my parents were there with Oprah, and Oprah's laughing at me painting the pornography on my parents' car, and like going, oh my God, this is actually funny, you know. No, they knew it was funny, but now it was a new level of acceptance by the sort of something that, you know. And then to top it off, at the end of the interview, Oprah, you know, sort of set it up where I would give them a trip to. You remember Oprah always gave away a car. Well, now I gave my parents a trip to Tahiti, and they got this all-inclusive trip to Tahiti for, you know, 16 days, and they're like, whoa, you can see their look on their face, and she's sort of like, Oprah's got her arm around her, and she's sitting there like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, you know, and so that was kind of there'd been little sort of smaller sort of things that had happened along the way that sort of indicated that my life was moving in a good direction. But I think when they came to Chicago, we went on Oprah, and then they got flown off to Tahiti, and they realized that maybe they could stop worrying about me for a minute.
I wanted to bring up two other pranks that just involve family members and get what you recall. The first one being the one your mom brought up, the cow's head.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just, we just happened to have a cow's head, and
What do you mean you just happened to have?
well, we had zero budget, right? Like the show was something that we were essentially volunteering to do.
An hour a week with no money to produce it.
No money to produce it.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning right now. My parents are inside sleeping. My parents love the movie The Godfather, so I'm going to wake them up in a Godfather-style fashion with this dead cow's head. They're gonna love this.
We were always looking for props that were something strange that we could get for free or cheap, you know. So, you know, one day thought, maybe we could go down to an abattoir and get some decapitated cow's heads and throw them in my parents' bed or something like that, you know. So, you know, okay, that sounds like a good idea. And so that's what we did.
This is a message from Don Corleone. It says, Luca Brazzi sleeps with the fishes.
That was one where she called me the next day, actually upset. Still aired it, but I felt a little bad about it. You know, she felt like, you know, I felt like, oh, this is sort of, you know, honestly, I didn't quite understand why she was so upset, because I was sort of thinking, you see what we're doing here, right? Like it's got to do something weird for the show, or it's not going to get a reaction, right? And the more stuff you would do, the more it would take to get a reaction, right? So you just waking them up in the middle of the night with a funny premise of some sort wasn't enough anymore. So Monica Lewinsky barging into their bedroom in the middle of the night was when I knew they were no longer going to be surprised by anything anymore. Because we'd been in LA, Monica Lewinsky was friends with some people who worked on our show, and we decided to fly up to Ottawa and run the entire media on a wild goose chase with Monica Lewinsky. At the time was like the biggest thing in the news.
And nobody could get an interview with her.
And nobody could get an
time.
interview with her, yeah. But she was, what had happened was we got invited to the release of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater video game in Los Angeles.
And Tony Hawk was as big of a figure to you as anybody.
As anybody, yeah. And we got there, and Monica Lewinsky was there, and then one of our writers and her sort of started talking, and I think they went out for a little while, and then she was friends with us, and we ended up shooting that bit. But it was, I thought it was pretty cool example of doing stuff with the Tom Green show doing stuff with the show that was kind of had a deeper subtext to it than just being wacky. Like we were making a political commentary about the nature of the media and how they were sort of obsessing over this woman who'd been in this situation and, chasing her around and making sort of, jokes at her expense, which is sort of the polar opposite of the world we're living in today, where it was, here was a young woman who'd been through something that was debatably sort of, or probably would be considered sort of abuse, really, in a way, or whatever. I don't know what word you want to use for it, but it was, she was a young girl put through a tough situation, right? And to have everybody making fun of her on every single talk show, including talk shows that I loved, was probably a traumatic thing for her. And so here we are, one of the weirdest, sort of goofiest, strangest shows on TV that's a talk show, and we took her up to Canada and we made the media the butt of the joke. The media that was making fun of her, now we, with her, made fun of the media by showing the absurdity of the sort of the pack nature of journalism, right? Where we went on a local public access show at my old station to make an announcement, right? And everybody thought, we sort of teased it like the announcement was we were going to get engaged, right? Yeah. But really, it was sort of a sleight of hand. We were trying to make them want to get this big announcement, and then we went on the public access station and we made an announcement that tomorrow we're going to be making another announcement. That's the announcement today, because we wanted to get the media to come. Then we went to this location in Ottawa, and international media from all around, hundreds of satellite trucks came around, and then the announcement was some bogus announcement that we were here to find fabric for her handbag company, and we barged into my parents' bedroom in the middle of the night and got their bed sheets and made some handbags out of it. My dad got up and said, "Oh, Monica, how you doing?" And he was not surprised, and that's when I knew, okay, the pranks are coming to an end here, so.
Oh, by the way, I don't know if you were joking when you said this or not, but your then partner, Drew Barrymore, did she actually think you were seeing Monica?
There might have been a moment, maybe. I mean, it was sort of like...
Because you said in your book it took like years to convince her that you, in fact, never did see or never did date Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah, I remember at one point she asked if I had, because, I guess it was just sort of, we had sort of teased the idea that we were in the show.
Right. That's
what was happening. But no, she was friends with some other people that worked on the show. Her brother was a huge fan of the Tom Green show, and she was, I believe she was, it was a long time ago, but I believe she was actually dating one of our writers, is actually what was going on. So, I mean, that is what was going on. But
the 4 years where you're on Rogers Community Cable, and I just mentioned no budget. You're producing an hour a week.
Yeah.
What do you think it taught you?
Well, I was editing all the clips myself. And, as I went to school for broadcasting, I learned how to shoot video and do lighting and audio and edit and all that stuff.
And you drive from college to the station to then.
My last year of college was the first year of the Tom Green Show, so we were sort of doing them both at the same time. With a lot of my classmates were working on the show with me. It became apparent early on that the funny part wasn't the thing that I was doing on the street. It was the people's reaction, was the joke. It was the punchline, right? Which sort of was something that I started to really figure out in the editing room. I'd be editing the clip where I'd go downtown Ottawa with some crazy contraption and we'd get back to the editing room and, I didn't have the reaction shot, and I'd get back and I'd go, no, we got to see that, lady on the street kind of confused, You can get the shot of me all day, but make sure you're always looking one eye open, making sure you're looking to the side, who's reacting, When we first went to MTV, there was sort of a lot of creative sort of push and pull in those first few months because, the MTV editors and producers would tighten everything up and they would cut all the reaction shots out. MTV at the time had a policy that they didn't want anyone over the age of 35 appearing on camera on their network. Well, all the reaction shots were from old people, because they reacted more, They were more confused by the bizarre things, So I had to convince them to use the shot of the old lady or the man on the street who's over 35, getting mad at me and, doing all that kind of stuff. So we squeezed that back in. So that was probably the one thing that was probably the most important thing in those early days was because, there wasn't really a lot of TV back then where people were just going out in the street. Like Letterman went out on the street, but he went out on the street with a professional crew from NBC and it was but this was me and my buddy,
Well, you talked about before how, you're Gen Y, you're the kind of internet generation, and yet all the TV still kind of looked the same.
Yeah.
Back then, and then here you guys burst onto the scene. Explain the $5,000 offer that you got. Treatment for a pilot?
Really?
Pre-MTV.
With the CBC?
Yeah.
Is that how much it was? Yeah.
That's what you said, at least.
Is it my book or something like that? Okay, yeah. I wrote the book 20 years ago, so the memory's fading a little bit. But that does sound like a lot of money, because it was a local at the time.
It was an enormous deal.
I'd never seen $5,000
Right.
before in one place, so it was pretty exciting. But
you said
it'd be a good deal now, to be honest with you. Anyone want to give me $5,000? I'd be happy to take it. But
you said it is very easy, especially when there's money involved, to trust someone else's instincts more than your own. And almost every time that happens, you end up kicking yourself for doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, later in life, when the show was a hit, there was definitely times where you'd have an opportunity to do something because there was a paycheck involved, it's not always the worst thing to do either. I mean, I think in hindsight, I go maybe I'm glad I sold out a few times. I got this nice farm now. It's okay. No one thinks about that movie anymore, anyways.
When you were in the process of this, you've done this pilot for the CBC.
Yeah.
As I understood it, you, in a semi-joking way, would talk a lot about suicide. If the pilot didn't get picked up.
I guess maybe that was me just trying to explain how important it was to me that this thing worked because I had no plan B whatsoever. I did not know what I would possibly do with my life if I wasn't able to work in television. I don't think I was ever, I don't think I ever would have seriously contemplated that because I had no intention to ever quit pursuing, my dreams or what have you, So
but it was always jumping off the Ottawa Four Seasons.
Oh, you're talking about the bit where I was standing up on the roof of a hotel? Or?
Yeah.
And did I joke about that, or? I mean, joking about suicide is something that's sort of pretty normal for me, but it's just a joke.
But it was never
Meaning, like just the
you
concept of suicide is something that's obviously very serious and uncomfortable for people because it's such an intense thing to think about our own mortality. So. But
going back to that time and when you were talking about, there was never anything there more than just a joke.
I think that people that in comedy who joke about death probably love life more than people that don't think about it. You know, I'm so terrified of the idea of everything coming to an end because I love life so much that the only way that I can make sense of it is to make a joke about it, right? The only way that I can make it seem, less terrifying is to say something about it and get a laugh at the expense of the fact that we are all going to die at some point, right? So, and I think that's always been true in comedy, But so anytime I've ever joked about suicide or something like that, or joked about death or uncomfortable things, it's I think always coming from a place of this is the worst possible thing I could think of, so let's make a joke about it. But the root of it, was, I mean, if I'm thinking of what you're getting at from memory from 25 years ago, I knew that TV show, we had a pilot on the CBC, and it
took 9 months to get any decision.
Yeah, and if it didn't get picked up, like I was back to square one. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. This was supposed to be the moment where it launched it. Okay, now of course we do the pilot for the CBC, and now we're going to get the big network deal, and then we're just going to. And so when the idea of there being a setback there was terrifying. But I'd had some setbacks like that before. Like when I was 19, we got dropped by our record label with my rap group, right? So it was just a matter of like, okay, we've got to go back and keep going. And we were fortunate we got a deal with the new Canadian Comedy Network after the pilot, and we did 26 episodes for them.
The role Marilyn Reed played in your life was what?
She's great. She was still friends. She's actually in the documentary. She's a producer in Ottawa who worked at a studio called animation studio in Ottawa, and we had this sort of loosely ready to go idea for a pilot with the CBC, and then I went down to this animation studio. Somehow I found out about this animation studio and told her about the idea of the show. And I think having an adult there who was an actual producer who's actually produced big shows, they did this show called The Raccoons, which was internationally syndicated show about, like little raccoons, And anyway, so it was a real TV company, and that sort of probably gave CBC the confidence to give us a budget, and we brought in a sponsor from Molson Canadian Beer, and we went and made this pilot. And she was very instrumental in helping us get that all put together.
The one other time I think you took a 4-hour shower was the Mondrian Hotel preceding your MTV pitch. Take me into that room. Where you had
into the
pitch.
Shower, or no? Okay.
Well, you can.
Yeah, no. Well, let's go to the other room.
Yeah.
So the MTV would
probably wouldn't have been much to see after a 4-hour shower.
No,
anyways.
absolutely not. No, it's not pretty. It's not pretty. So the show was on in Canada, and I had done this talk show called Open Mic with Mike Bullard in Canada, and his manager was a man by the name Howard Lapidus, the late Howard Lapidus, who's a good friend of mine, was my manager for many years. He passed away a few years ago.
Big industry figure.
Yeah, he had his own independent management company. He represented Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew, and they were doing the show Loveline. And he was, he was Norm Macdonald's manager also, and others, and I believe Carson Daly also. So he had Carson Daly on MTV and Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla on MTV, and I met him in Canada, and he saw what I was doing, and then he brought our tapes to MTV. And so they saw these tapes, and they were kind of like, do you have any more of these tapes? And we were like, well, yeah, I've got about 2,000 more of these tapes, you know. And so that really piqued their interest, because it was sort of the first time I think MTV had kind of gotten an independent show that has, because the show had the pieces out in the street, they were able to sort of say, oh, we could take the stuff out of the street and then repackage them in our studio, right? And so they sort of saw, oh, that could work. But before they really got to that point, I had to pitch the show to them. There's a process. They flew me down to, MTV saw the few tapes Howard had given them. They flew me down to LA, and they had these pitch meetings at the House of Blues on Sunset. And they put me up in the Mondrian Hotel. I was like, man, I'm in Hollywood. This is a Mondrian Hotel. It's pretty fancy.
That hotel was as big as it got back then,
yeah,
too.
Absolutely. And it's just a lot different than the travel lodge that I stayed at when we were traveling around shooting the show. But no, it was cool. So I had to go pitch the show, and I went into this House of Blues pitch session with all the MTV executives there, and I pitched the show, and that ended up resulting in us getting picked up by MTV. So, but I was again terrified about that pitch going wrong. So I did one of my now apparently notorious long showers. I didn't even realize I showered so much. I thought I was unhygienic until this interview. I feel much better about myself. No, this is good.
What ultimately led to the MTV show stopping?
Well, I mean, the truth be told, I quit the show because I got cancer. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Initially stopped production.
Yeah, so the show was basically may have been the #1 show on MTV that year. There wasn't many shows on MTV at the time, remember? There was The Real World, there was Road Rules, and there was Celebrity Deathmatch and Us.
And they'd run you a million times a day.
They'd run the show all day. So the show was a hit. I all of a sudden, we just moved to Los Angeles. So there was a lot of things changing. Like the show was in New York for the first year, and then.
But you found you couldn't do like the same bits in New York anymore
because
of
very difficult
the
to
mob scene that would start.
Yeah, it was. The show was so popular that we would go out to film in Manhattan. There's so many people per square block in Manhattan that, you know, the second the camera came out, everybody would see me and they'd start crowding around, and you couldn't there was no element of surprise for these pranks anymore, right? So
you were no longer the anonymous figure you once were.
Yeah, so we had to kind of go to a city where at least there was fewer people per block, and I could walk down the street and find somebody that maybe didn't recognize me right away, and then kind of mess with them, you know. But and there was also an element of I was getting these movie offers. I now just shot the movie Road Trip, which hadn't come out yet.
With Todd Phillips, who you had been in a Pepsi commercial.
That's right. Yeah. Todd Phillips, who's made the Hangover and The Joker and all these movies, and some of the biggest comedy directors today. This was his first movie, and he put me in these Pepsi commercials and then this movie. So that was happening, and I kind of also just kind of thought it'd be kind of fun to move to LA. I mean, the truth is, I can just sort of be kind of like. I'm giving you the straight up truth. I kind of wanted to buy a car, Like I just made money for the first time in my life. And I was living in New York, and nobody in New York has a car, some people have, but it's like, you don't drive in New York, you take cab. I wanted to get a car. So I wanted to move to LA, be near my manager and my agency, and go do these movie deals and get a car, So that's why I moved to LA. Then we literally just moved to LA. We'd been there for a few months, and I got cancer. Half the crew moved out with me. People gave up their apartments in New York. The show was a hit. We were going to be on for years as far as we were concerned. And then I got cancer, and that was sort of a major curveball, right? And we filmed, the last show was the cancer special. We filmed an episode of me dealing with cancer. That took about a year to really deal with. There was some pretty invasive lymph node dissection surgery where they cut you up here, and there's like, it's very painful, and kind of recovery time was, and
I will ask you.
I didn't
more
really
about that
necessarily
coming
want to be running around on the street filming with my body cut open. There was a lot of physical comedy in the show, like I'd be always falling down and doing sort of stuff like that was quite, running from security guards and things like this.
They had to try everything possible to talk you out of quitting the hit show, right? I mean, regardless of if you were sick, I'm sure they said, well, you can come back when you get better. Or...
Yeah, I think it was sort of more along the lines of stopping the show. I had now been doing this show for like 7 or 8 years or something like that, like getting up, going out in the street, pulling pranks, doing this stuff. It had been my show for so long. Now we had a big network there, and they were, very intense about how they wanted to edit it, and it was sort of always a push and pull. There was a lot of pressure from the way. Television was a little different then, like you're doing a show on MTV, it's different than it is now with streaming and so many places for content, right? They had a very intense sort of level of engagement with the creative process on how you would what actually got on the air, like notes and
the nicest way possible you could have said it.
And there was a couple executives there, one in particular that was pretty aggressive with the way that what I was allowed and not allowed to do. And
was this a teleprompter guy or somebody else?
It was just got intense because I very much wanted to do things one way, and there was a lot of sort of creative push and pull there, which was frustrating. And
you got sick of the bullshit?
A little bit, and at the same time, I mean, this is me being completely honest. I had like probably about 3 movie deals on the table that were paying me a lot more money than MTV was paying me. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to take some time off running around on the street, getting chased by security guards and injuring myself. I'm in a lot of pain. I've just written the movie Freddie Got Fingered. It was purchased, they were going to let me direct it. That was going to take a year. So I kind of just said, we're going to stop the show and take some time off the show. And I went and made, Freddie Got Fingered and Stealing Harvard, and Road Trip came out, and did a few other movies after that. And then it was a good decision. And then when I decided I wanted to go back to MTV, I did go back to MTV and made a talk show. So the new Tom Green Show. So
you said, I think this is specific to the films. In hindsight, would I have done everything the same? I probably wouldn't have, because I would have known the effect it would have on me. What did you mean?
There's been an evolution on, there's been some sort of a changing sort of
mindset
about that movie, Freddie Got Fingered. Because when I wrote that book, I mean, it was sort of like, it was, there was a lot of harsh criticism of the movie, and now I can't really walk down the street without somebody yelling, "Daddy, would you like some sausage at me?" or some crazy line from the movie, and people like the movie now. But at the time when I wrote that, I was thinking, oh, geez, maybe I shouldn't have made this movie, But with 20 years perspective on it, I mean, it's kind of a big part of kind of the sort of trajectory of my life, If I had made sort of a more down the middle mainstream comedy movie, I probably would have made a whole bunch more of those if I was lucky, and then, or even worse scenario, because I turned down movies to make Freddie Got Fingered. There was, and they were more sort of mainstream movies that kind of came and went with no real. They were horribly reviewed, but they also weren't beloved either, So it could have been just like. Just a big nothing burger. Instead, it was a shocking, weird, polarizing thing, which at the time kind of hurt when Roger Ebert said that it was the worst movie ever made or whatever. But now, 20 years later, people talk about it and like it, and I stuck to my guns and got to make a weird, crazy movie, got to write and direct it and do a lot of things I would have never gotten to do, so it was pretty cool.
How do you think that period influenced future business decisions you made?
When you're young and things are going great and everybody's, sort of, there was a period of time right around that time when the show was a hit and, basically there was less sort of creative pushback, could kind of do whatever we wanted for a minute there. And, I think I was maybe a little less collaborative than I, am now. Because, I was sort of like, in my head, I was thinking, we got to push this and make this as creative. If someone said, oh, maybe you shouldn't do that, or maybe you shouldn't do this, it was like kind of, but I think I've grown to kind of like being more collaborative in my approach to making television and making comedy. Because,
Why?
Because I kind of think that like, I realize that I don't know it all now, But when you're 28 years old and you got a hit show and it's been a sort of only an upward sort of trajectory and nobody's ever said that you sort of think, oh well, I just got to keep going with my general immediate instinct. Now I kind of take my initial instinct and I still weigh it with what other people are saying and then kind of like make sure that we're borrowing ideas from others around me and making sure that that my initial instinct is exactly where I want to go, or do I want to kind of collaborate and create something together with people. So I think I think that's just part of getting older too. It might not even be anything to do with the movie or the show. It might just be getting older. You start to learn, because you fail as you get older. You fail. You're going to fail at things, and every time you fail at something, then you go, well, why did that fail? And then you go, oh, if you're careful about it, you might think, oh, why did that fail? Maybe I won't do that again. Maybe I'll do this way instead, or maybe I'll do this way. Some people don't ever change, though. Some people don't learn from mistakes, right? And they continue to, make the same mistakes over and over again. But I find that when I make a mistake or fail at something, I sort of tend to analyze what went wrong and try something different, so. Okay,
here's one for you then, because I was going to ask you about relationships. What do you think marriage taught you about yourself?
I don't know. I wasn't married for that long. I don't know if I had a lot of time to really learn anything, but no.
Oh, come on.
I wasn't really married for very long, so it's sort of like, it wasn't like I was married for a long period of time. It was like when it was 6 months or something I was married or something like that. So, so I don't know. I mean, and it was obviously we're talking about Drew, and it was a very unique experience, right? Because I was brand new in Los Angeles, and she'd of course been there her whole life, and so to me a lot of things were sort of hard to understand, just sort of the whole nature of being thrust into that sort of center of the show business kind of ether. So
you once called it a tornado, those 3 years.
Yeah, and I had cancer at the same time, and my dad had cancer at that time, and movies coming out and shows coming out and all that stuff. So it was a lot to process. I don't know if I could really say that it was a typical marriage. So I don't know if I really learned anything about marriage so much.
Oh, come on, really? I mean, because I would have to
think
not
like marriage as a general way you explain what a marriage is. It's like, I don't know if I experienced that, I experienced sort of a more of a bizarre kind of, whirlwind of stuff happening all at once, which was maybe more than my, young, naive, kid was able to process or handle.
How about the most bizarre thing that happened during that period?
When I did the movie Charlie's Angels with Drew. That's how I met Drew. I went and did the movie Charlie's Angels. She asked me to be the movie. I did the movie.
By the way, do you think she was recruiting you for the movie because she had a crush on you, or
No, I don't
because she
think
wanted
so.
you in the? Okay.
I don't think so. I just think that the show was doing well, and she thought it'd be funny to get this goofball in the movie, you know.
And then the better the show went, the more people wanted to kind of increase your exposure in their films.
Yeah, it was sort of the nature of, I was doing a few movies, and it was kind of it was I'd already shot Road Trip, and then they asked me to do that, but so I remember I was hosting Saturday Night Live, okay, which seems just crazy to me. You know, even today, I can't believe that I got to do that. And
you were in a bathtub with Lorne Michaels, right?
In a bathtub with Lorne Michaels and Will Ferrell and Jimmy Fallon and Tina Fey and Chris Kattan and Molly Shannon and this incredible cast, right? And I'm this goofy kid on MTV in there, and just kind of completely amazed that I'm getting to do this. But I remember Charlie's Angels was coming out around the same time as I was hosting Saturday Night Live, and I remember I hosted SNL, and then the next morning, Drew and I got on a plane to London, England, where we went to the royal premiere of Charlie's Angels, and then had dinner with King Charles, at the time Prince Charles. And it's like, one day you're on Saturday Night Live, next day you're in England having dinner at St. James Palace with the future King of England, and you're thinking to yourself, this is pretty weird. This is surreal.
And you're present enough even then to realize the insanity.
Yeah, and particularly growing up Canadian, where you had the Silver Jubilee and every kid gets a silver dollar with the Queen on it, and it's royalty is a bigger deal here in these Commonwealth countries, right? So for me, that was probably one of the most unbelievable things, to get to hang out with Prince Charles and talk about Peter Sellers and Monty Python, and yeah, it was pretty cool.
Okay, last Drew question. Was it awkward going on the show after all those years? Because it seemed like when I was watching a clip of it, it seemed a little uncomfortable, but what do I know?
It was weird, it was pretty weird. It was cool, it was interesting. I mean, we hadn't talked in quite a few years. So she invited me on her talk show, and I came on and basically sort of reconnected with her for the first time on television, which was I thought positive. It's good to have positive energy out there, in regards to everybody. As I get older, I don't like to, have negative energy. When you're young, you go through things that don't work out, whether it's with, business or in personal life, and you can kind of walk away from it, and you can carry around negative energy your whole life thinking, oh man, I'm mad at this person or whatever. But I don't like to carry around negative energy like that. So it was good to be able to kind of get that out in the open. We're supportive of her show and proud of her, happy she's doing well, and it was funny way to go reconnect with her. Yeah.
Since you posted about her on social, can I ask about Amanda?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long have you guys been together?
It's been a couple of years. Yeah.
Okay.
She actually grew up in the same small military-based town that I lived in when I was a kid. She's from a military background in Canada, in Petawawa, where I grew up when I was a little kid before I moved to Ottawa. We went to the same elementary school, not the same year. We weren't there at the same time. She's a little bit younger than me. She's she's. I was going to make a ridiculous joke there, but I'm not going to make a joke.
Yeah. Okay. How much younger?
No, she's not that much younger than me. She's 35 years old. So yeah. So and I'm 60. So no, what am I now? I forget. But
you said
I'm 53.
You said the 50s have been your best decade so far.
So far, yeah. I'm loving being in my 50s. Yeah, for sure.
She posted something that she lost like 115 pounds.
Yeah, she's got an incredible story. Yeah, she's worked as a personal trainer, and she is a very healthy, health-conscious person with her diet and with her exercise, and it was good. It's helping me actually be more health-conscious. And
your mom says she will occasionally get in your ear that, her kids, they coming. She said, I think Tom still wants him.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I think that would be fun. I mean, it would be a great place to have kids and raise a family out here.
This
in the
would
farm.
be the coolest thing ever, right?
Chasing the chickens around, and
Right.
it is nice to be back in Canada, kind of close to where I grew up. So I could see it would be a fun thing to do. But we'll see what happens. Yeah. I mean, I can still have kids supposedly. I have one testicle. So I still have one. So.
But that, I mean,
Still works.
That would be
Yeah.
like
It
the
still
coolest.
works. Still works. So just since you asked.
What you went through with cancer. Explain what the doc initially thought it was, and then how it quickly progressed from there when you first realized
well,
something
because it
wrong.
was misdiagnosed when I first sort of felt that there was some sort of something wrong down there, and they said it was epididymitis, and they gave me some antibiotics, and we went off and filmed a bunch of episodes of the MTV show while I was waiting for these antibiotics to kick in, and then they never kicked in. So I went back to the doctor again, and he said, "Oh, she's sorry, my bad. It was actually cancer." So it's made me kind of very conscious of my health and my awareness of I'm always kind of like I said, when COVID happened, I took it real seriously, because not only is it possible to get sick, but it's also possible to get sick and then be told that you're not sick, or it's complicated. It's not just sort of a easy black and white thing to understand, and even a doctor can not diagnose you properly. So yeah.
What was the single scariest moment during that period?
Well, it was definitely like the moment of realization that I could potentially die from this. I was sort of sitting there, sort of devastated, because the show was like, kind of my life at that point, and I realized I was going to have to stop the show. It was sort of this sort of devastating thing where it's like, what the hell's going to happen here? I mean, it just seemed like such a bizarre curveball to be getting testicular cancer at this time, after everything had led me to this moment where things were going great, and then I get testicular cancer. So I just assumed the worst, was the assumption was, if I got testicular cancer, well, I'm probably not going to survive it either. Right?
You really thought that?
I pretty much thought that you can't help but go there. I mean, you're sitting there, you've got cancer in your body, you're looking at the statistics, and you go, okay, they're pretty favorable, but it's not 100%, and me being sort of, at times can be a pessimist. I am very much, I always assume the worst, right? And then I try to avoid it. But because I'm aware that it's possible, I think is how I avoid some of these things,
You always assume the worst.
I think so, yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think I'm very fear-driven. We talked earlier, if the show doesn't get picked up, what am I going to do? Well, I'm assuming, the show's not going to get picked up, so, the odds of it getting picked up are so low that, it's terrifying, so I got to really put the afterburners on to try to make things happen, because I'm assuming that it's the likelihood of things happening, positive things happening, is not always great. So you got to kind of, use your fear as a way of motivating yourself to work hard and get things done.
And so it was a 3 or 4 year actually recovery process, as I understand it, because and I think the public was probably less aware of the stress and the pain you were in at the time, and then I guess there was nerve damage connected to some of the surgery. So what did that recovery process entail?
No, it was extreme pain, really. Waking up from the lymph node dissection was really the one that was the pain, not the test. Strangely, surprisingly, it's not the testicular cancer operation. Removing the testicles is pretty easy, right? They just go in and they cut you up here, up in your abdomen, and they go down and they just kind of shuck it out like an oyster, as I've said in past stand-up performances, but it's sort of like it's not too invasive of a surgery. But the lymph nodes dissection, where they had to go in and check my lymph nodes just to see if there was any cancer in there, which was an elective surgery. because you do an MRI, the MRI doesn't see anything. That means there's still a 1% chance it's in there, but it's too small for the MRI to see it. So then you're given the choice, okay, you're gonna wait, come in every 2 weeks for the next 5 years to get your lymph nodes checked. And then if you see it, you'll get it early and we'll do chemo. Or we can just take a piece of your lymph node out right now and look at it under a microscope, and then you'll know 100% whether you have cancer or not. And so I elected to do that, and they took it out, and I did not have cancer in my lymph nodes, so I did not have to have chemotherapy. But the surgery itself was so shockingly painful when I came out of it, and then it really probably took many, many, many years actually to really fade. It sort of went from extreme pain to dull pain, and then you're sort of dealing with a dull pain for the next 5 years or more of your life, which sort of becomes normal. But in those initial years, it was pretty traumatic, to be honest with you, because you're sort of, when I was hosting Saturday Night Live, I've never talked about this publicly before. I sort of allude to it a little bit in the documentary that's coming out, but I don't even get into detail, but a little more detail is this, your entire body has just basically been through a traumatic thing, and now you're sort of somewhat in pain, but also exhausted. Like I had a lot of energy issues. And at the same time, you're also terrified because you're like, oh my God, is this gonna stop? Is this gonna go away? And then you're also, at that moment in my life, had a lot of attention on me. I'm hosting Saturday Night Live, and you have to show up and be happy and positive and funny. And in your mind, you're scared that you're not recovering and you're in pain, and you don't want to really talk about that. You want to sort of, there was this sort of idea, I think society has changed a lot since then, but there was this idea of like, oh, I don't want to look like I'm weak, or I don't want to look like I'm sick, so I have to pretend that I'm completely recovered instantly, because I want to work and I want to, take advantage of all these great opportunities that are here in front of me. And so I don't want people to think that I'm, any less funny, happy, or alive than I was 6 months ago when my show was on the air. So you're sort of struggling through gritted teeth as you're trying to pretend that you're doing great, but really you're not.
So how would you privately cope with that at the time?
Well, it was tough. It was tough. All gamut of all emotions. Scared, sad, angry. Physically in pain, and at the same time you're kind of getting hit by all sorts of different sort of things from just the position that I was in with the show at the time. So it was very difficult to navigate.
Because everybody wants a piece of you commercially, and
and also like the move when Freddie Got Fingered came out, got the bad reviews, and then things weren't necessarily. Everything wasn't going great all of a sudden, You had a lot of eyeballs on me at that moment, with the cancer and the show and the movie and personal relationship with Drew and all that stuff. It was kind of like, and so then you're sort of trying to put on a brave face, but really inside you're kind of like, oh my God, this is not that pleasant, having my, this sort of burning sensation running down my entire spine, basically, is what it felt like. It felt like my entire spinal cord was sort of like, had like hot chili pepper poured all over it for about, 2 or 3 years. And they didn't understand why I was still in pain, It was sort of, very, very odd,
Was there a single lowest point for you during that period?
Just sort of a good year there where I was just kind of really just terrified that I was going to be in this kind of pain for the rest of my life, and I was feeling that I wasn't going to be able to kind of keep doing what I love to do, which is perform and be funny. And you gotta be in a good mood when you're doing comedy. You gotta be happy. You gotta have a smile on your face. You gotta feel good physically. And it was hard for me to do that. I had to kind of power through there. So it was just terrifying, you know. But
Who do you confide in? Or is there, like, back then, was there somebody you were truly kind of sharing what
I
you
think
were
my
going
parents
through?
have been extremely important to me in my life. Like, they've always been people that my mom and dad are there for me always. I trust their judgment.
Yeah.
And I value it, and they've always guided me well through things. They've always made a lot of decisions with their advice and counsel. So it's been good.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that's in part because, well, you know, healthcare costs are way less expensive here than in the States, and everybody has that amazing benefit. The challenge is there's longer wait times.
Yeah. I mean, it's a complex conversation to talk about, you know, universal healthcare and the American healthcare system versus the Canadian healthcare system. There's, I was fortunate. I had a few bucks, a little bit of expendable income at the time, and I was able to, pay for my dad to get his surgery about 3 months faster than he would have had it in Canada. So,
Which is a huge deal when you have cancer.
yeah, I mean, no. Well, the thing is it was a slow-growing cancer. Truth is, he could have stayed here and he would have been fine. We've got a great healthcare system here. But me being sort of having just gone through cancer and being sort of aggressively proactive and having had some extra funding to move it up 3 months, I just wanted to do that just to get it over with. And I had just been through the hospital and I knew everybody and we just navigated through the whole system. But so I mean, we can talk about healthcare for an hour. We can do an hour about healthcare at some point. Because on the flip side, I have so many friends down in the U.S. who are, working on my shows and working with me, and comedians and people who don't have healthcare, because they, can't afford to spend the monthly amount of money it costs to have real all-encompassing healthcare, So.
No.
So it's there's pros and cons to both systems for sure.
Do you think there was any connectivity to your dad's cancer and what he was exposed to in Vietnam?
I don't know. It's probably impossible for me to say. I don't think so. But I think it's just the luck of the draw,
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you've said publicly before that it impacted, or the thinking is that it could have impacted your brother, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, my dad was, exposed to Agent Orange when he was in Vietnam. So he was, drinking the water and eating the local food. And Agent Orange, of course, had been spread into all of the jungles out there and stuff. My dad was there with Canadian military as a peacekeeping sort of task force overlooking the withdrawal of the U.S. troops in the early 70s. But so it's possible. Yeah, it's possible it affected things. But yeah.
It's not a good topic, or?
It's not my story to tell. It's more about my brother and my dad, and so yeah. Yeah, I just kind of, it's up to them to talk about that, I think, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
If somebody was in that same position, debating whether or not to do what you had done with the lymph nodes, would you recommend it, or would you say
I would
hold off?
I would recommend it, even though it was. I mean, that's a very good question, actually. So you don't know what the answer is going to be, right? Like, I mean, in hindsight, like, okay, they took my lymph nodes out and they found out that I didn't have anything in there. So then you're like, I didn't even have to do that surgery, But the truth is, if I hadn't done it, I would have had to go back and get checked every 2 weeks for 5 years until they, and so then with the surgery, I only had to go back and get checked every 6 months for the next 5 years. So you imagine having to drive through Hollywood traffic for every 2 weeks, So that was the reason what went into the decision. Now if I had known that there'd be as much pain afterwards, I don't know. It would have been a very tough call, But I'd say that ultimately, like.
But looking back now, even knowing the pain you went through, you would say it.
Well, it's a very complicated question, because also having gone through that pain actually has made me who I am in a certain extent. Like I'm a different person because of it, right? And so, and I like who I am now, believe it or not. I mean, you may wonder why that would be the case, but I do think it's given me a different sort of perspective on life, having to go through something that challenging, which is good. So, I hate to say it to people, if you get your lymph node dissection, you'll find out whether you have to have chemo or not right away. You might have to endure like 3 or 4 or 5 years of extreme pain, but then 20 years later, you'll be a person that you might actually be happy with because of it. So I think it's an individual choice between someone and their doctor, because it's too complicated. And there's probably been medical advancements and stuff that have been made since then that probably would make it easier to make that choice too. So. Right. Mm-hmm. It's really complicated. I get asked a lot about testicular cancer from people that have just gotten it, and I give my opinions, but I always say, go to your doctor, talk to your doctor, do your own research, don't listen to me.
Although it is whenever, I would imagine if you're somebody in that position, it's valuable to have the benefit of talking to somebody who's gone through it.
And it's young guys, obviously, get it, and it's younger people get testicular cancer. You wouldn't think you're getting cancer when you're 15 years old. So if you get a pain in your testicle, often what happens with young people is they don't go tell anybody because they're embarrassed, and then they walk around with cancer for a year, and then it's spread too much, and they actually could die from it, right? So I've had a lot of people come up to me over the years at my stand-up shows and say they went to the hospital because of this, and because of this cancer special that we did on MTV and diagnosed it. And so I've had quite a few emotional sort of reunions and interactions with people who kind of felt that episode of the show kind of saved their life. It's been quite heavy at times, actually.
Which is to be the best feeling ever, though,
right? A good feeling,
right?
yeah, for sure, yeah.
So I want to run through some of kind of the notable folks that you've crossed paths with.
Absolutely.
Over the years. The first Letterman appearance, and what comes to mind there, because obviously I think Dave was somebody you used to dress up as back in the day.
Yeah. How do you dress up as David Letterman? Oh, khaki pants, Adidas shoes, and a blazer and a tie, and I would do stand-up comedy sort of dressed in that way when I was a kid, and probably even mimicking his sort of cadence and his delivery a bit, I would host the school talent show with, a musician from the school who had a Hammond organ with a Leslie amp, and he'd be Paul Schaefer and I'd be Letterman. We'd put a desk on the stage, and I would do a little talk show and introduce all the bands and stuff at the school. So yeah, I loved Letterman, grew up, and my documentary that's on Prime covers that and follows me to my sort of whole sort of lifelong sort of admiration of David Letterman, and me eventually getting to go on his show. But it was surreal.
The show too, yeah.
And hosting the show too, yeah, a few years later. It was surreal because like MTV was just sort of realizing that the show was a hit, and then all of a sudden Letterman called, and it was just sort of put it over the edge, That's one thing that happened with the Tom Green show, right? It's this little thing that they picked up from Canada. We threw it on the air, and then within weeks, Todd Phillips and Pepsi called, and I'm doing the commercials they ran during the NCAA tournament, the basketball, college basketball, which popped the awareness of me, and then Letterman called, and MTV was just kind of like, what the hell? This is just supposed to be some goofy little show we're putting on, and now all of a sudden Letterman, in New York, everybody, everyone loved Letterman, but in New York he was just the king of New York, right? So people were just kind of, my bosses at MTV were starting to realize, oh, this show is important. He's doing Letterman. That's cool. So that was amazing. I remember standing in the side of the stage, and Biff Henderson comes out. He's actually the floor director of the show, and I'm like, I'm about to go on, and Letterman's over at the desk, and I somehow mustered up the nerve to like wave at him before I went on. And he looked over, hey, and I was like, oh my God, Letterman just looked at me, you know. And then I walked out and did the show, and it was awesome. Couldn't believe it, but yeah, it was cool. That was one of those things that you just can't believe. At the time, just could not believe that was happening, you know.
All right, here's somebody who's in the news right now for all the wrong reasons. You get a call from the office of Puff Daddy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What stands out from that?
When the show first got picked up by MTV and we were on the air, we got a call from Puff Daddy to come, and he wanted to meet me. So I went over to Bad Boy Entertainment to his recording studio, and me and one of the writers of the show, and I went over there, and he sort of played some of his music. And you know, I'd been in a rap group when I was a teenager, so I was kind of pretty excited. But I don't even want to smile talking about the story anymore. It's sort of like I can't even really talk about it anymore in a way, in the new context of what's going on. It's a different story now.
Then.
It's a different story now. Like I can't. Oh man, it was so amazing, you know. But it's like what's going on now. You sort of don't know what to think about what's happening. But at the time, you know, I sometimes think like I was a little bit naive to the way show business works. You know, like a lot of show business is about relationships and all this type of thing. And I didn't really realize that. And I was so driven to shoot the show. We went over to the studio, and at the end of the visit there, he said, I'm having a party this weekend. I want you to come to the party. And he gave us a couple of passes to this party in the Hamptons, right? And I went back to the office, and the party was like on the day we were supposed to go shoot some goofy bit on the street. And I just sort of said, well, we can't go to Puffy's party. We got to go make our bit on the street. You know, we got to go film our funny bit, you know. So then one of the producers or something went to the party, and it was like him and his kids and 4 people there hanging out at his house. And the producer showed up with the pass thinking it was going to be some big party. And anyway, so I always thought, at the time, I always thought, oh boy, I probably should have gone to that party. But I was too busy, like, you know, delivering a fake pizza to somebody and getting chased by a guy with a hammer in Long Island, you know. But
how about the connectivity between you and Eminem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was cool too. I mean, that was crazy. Like when the Bum Bum song came out, which was my song, we set out to make the stupidest song ever. I think we accomplished that. We put it on the show. It went to #1 on Total Request Live.
Got you a record deal.
Got me a record deal, yeah. Which that record didn't come out because of my cancer, but I did get a big record deal with Virgin Records. But you imagine an entire record of Bum Bum songs? I mean, what we missed out upon on there as a society, I think, is just horrible.
But you had the #1 song on the planet.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And then Eminem's next single was him dressed up as me in the Bum Bum song, Slim Shady. If you watch that video, he's running around with a superhero costume on, the same exact superhero costume, and he raps about me humping a dead moose. Unbelievable.
President Trump, what stands out from kind of your experience with him on The Apprentice?
And you're talking about Dennis Rodman, or no? You're talking about Donald Trump.
Trump,
okay.
Yeah. I'll ask you about Rodman after that.
Rodman's awesome. We had fun. I probably got fired because of how much fun I was having hanging out with Dennis Rodman.
What?
Well, we would go out drinking on the nights we were supposed to be working and stuff. You know, it's pretty fun. If you get to go drinking in New York City with Dennis Rodman, don't pass that up. That's a lot of fun. He knows how to have a good time, that guy.
Best person you've ever partied with? I mean, in terms of like most fun you've ever had.
Well, it was in, we were in New York, and he's Dennis Rodman, and he's first of all, he's just, you walk in a room and everybody immediately sees it's Dennis Rodman, and no, he's a fun guy. Yeah, fun guy to hang out with. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, Donald Trump was, it's true, I was on the Celebrity Apprentice. That's true. I got to hang out with the President of the United States. But unfortunately, I went out drinking with Dennis Rodman, and I screwed the whole thing up, so I got fired. Yeah.
But you got back.
And then he brought me back, yes. I wrote a letter to Donald Trump after I got fired on Trump Tower stationery. We were staying in Trump Tower. I wrote a letter. I said, Mr. Trump, you know, I'm a comedian, and I know I got fired because I went out drinking with Dennis, but honestly, I thought it would be funny for the show, and wish you all the best with the show. I just wanted the show to be funny, and you know, thanks for having me on, kind of thing.
But completely genuine.
Genuine, yeah, absolutely genuine. The next day I got a call from the producers and they wanted to bring me back, so they brought me back for the final challenge. So I have the distinction of being, you know, they always bring people back for the final episodes who were fired, but they bring like 2 people back or something.
Yeah.
But I have the distinction of being the earliest person to have been fired to get brought back. They usually bring someone that stayed on to like episode 7 and then got fired, they bring them back. I got fired episode 3, so.
Well, I mean, that is cool, though.
It's pretty cool, yeah. It's a pretty cool thing.
All right, and lastly, your most memorable interaction from having William Shatner as your landlord?
Yeah. So when I moved to Los Angeles, I rented a house to live in, and it happened to be William Shatner owned the house in his neighborhood that he rented out, and he was my landlord. And well, a couple of things. I've had a few. He's Canadian, so it was like very exciting to meet this Canadian icon who I grew up watching on Star Trek, and now he's my landlord. Literally would come over to pick up the check from me like once a month, like a couple times. He would just come over. Here you go, you know, you know, paying my rent to Captain Kirk here, you know. But then he actually came in and met with me to play my father in Freddie Got Fingered. And I met with William Shatner, James Woods, John Voight, and Rip Torn. And, you know, truth be told, I mean, we had written the movie with William Shatner in mind, actually. And so this was somebody we really wanted. And then the studio really, really wanted me to use Rip Torn. And I was like, well, that'll be awesome too. But I do also remember one day I was sitting in front of my rental house still, in my rental house, and I just found out that we were going with Rip Torn, and my landlord pulls up in his Jaguar, and I'm standing there, and the window goes down, and he goes, so what's going on with the movie? I go, oh, yeah, they're actually, studio wants to give it to Rip Torn. He said, okay. Boom, drives off. It's like,
really?
Yeah. That was my last interaction with my. No, I used to see him around town too. I don't think there was any hard feelings, you know.